Good evening, everyone. I am David Paulides. Tonight, we are leaving the familiar forests of North America behind to cross the vast Pacific. We are headed to a place where beauty and danger walk hand in hand. The Australian Alps. This is a land of jagged peaks and ancient eucalyptus trees that stretch for hundreds of miles. In the world of Missing 411, we look for patterns in the darkness. Patterns that defy every logical explanation known to modern science. Deep within the Victorian high country, there is a name that makes even the toughest hunters lower their voices. They call him the Button Man. Some say he is a hermit, while others believe he is something much more primal. He earned that name because he carves buttons from the antlers of the deer he hunts in the silence. People describe him as a ghost who can stand inches behind you without snapping a single twig. He is the master of the unseen. But I am not here to tell you campfire ghost stories or local legends that have been exaggerated over time. I am here to talk about the people who walked into his territory and never walked out. People who vanished into thin air. Look at this map of the Wonnangatta Valley, specifically the areas near Mansfield and the steep ridges. This terrain is so remote it takes an entire day just to reach the edge of the wilderness. It is the perfect place to disappear. Let us look at our first case, which involves Russell Hill and Carol Clay back in the year 2020. Russell was 74 years old, and he was an absolute expert with radio equipment and drones. He was a man of precision. Carol was his longtime friend, and they were well prepared for a standard camping trip in the valley. They had a high-end vehicle and enough supplies to last for weeks in the bush. They were not amateurs in any sense. On March 20th, their communication simply stopped, and the silence that followed was deafening to their families. When searchers finally reached their campsite, they found a scene that looked like a nightmare. The camp was a ruin. Their tent had been partially destroyed by fire, but strangely, most of their expensive gear was untouched. The drone was still there, and their vehicle sat silently, waiting for owners who would never return. There were no signs of a struggle. In the world of Missing 411, when someone vanishes but leaves behind every item of value, it suggests a sudden disruption. It is as if they were snatched away in the middle of a mundane task. The clock just stopped ticking. Now we move to the disturbing disappearance of Niels Becker, which took place in October 2019. Niels was 39 years old and was in peak physical condition for a long-distance hiker. He was training his body for endurance. He sent a cheerful text to his family saying the weather was fine and he was making good time. But soon after that message, he walked directly into the area known as the Button Man's haunt. He walked into the void. The Button Man himself later told the police that he saw Niels walking right past his remote camp. That was the very last time anyone ever saw Niels Becker alive or dead. He vanished shortly after that sighting. What follows is the most chilling detail of all, which we see repeatedly in these Missing 411 cases. The authorities brought in the best search dogs in the country to find a trail. But the dogs failed. These dogs are trained to find a scent in the most punishing conditions on the planet. Yet when they arrived at the spot where Niels was last seen, they simply paced in circles. They refused to track the scent further. It is as if the scent trail just hit a wall and evaporated into the mountain air. This is a major profile point that the Park Service cannot explain away with simple logic. How does a scent just stop? Then there is the mystery of Conrad Whitlock, who disappeared in July 2019 near Mount Buller. He was an elderly man who knew the bush well and had walked these trails for decades. He was a veteran of the mountains. His car was found parked on the side of a road with the keys still in the ignition. His phone was sitting on the seat and the engine was still warm when investigators arrived. He had stepped out for a moment. He didn't take a jacket and he didn't take his water bottle, despite the freezing alpine temperatures. He walked away from his life and disappeared into the thick brush without leaving a single footprint. Not one trace was found. Let us analyze these cases through the lens of logic and the specific profile points we have gathered. The first point is what we call the Oz factor, or the sudden silence. The world goes completely quiet. Survivors often report that the birds stop singing and the insects stop their buzzing all at once. It feels like the air has been sucked out of the forest. This is the sign of a predator that isn't human. The second point is the erratic behavior of the weather during the search and rescue operations. As soon as the search begins, a massive fog or a sudden blizzard rolls in. It feels like the mountain is hiding something. This weather doesn't just hinder the searchers, it washes away any physical evidence that might have existed. It is almost as if the environment itself is working against the investigators. It is a tactical weather event. Now we have to talk about the legend of the Button Man and his role in this mystery. Hunters have reported looking through high-tech thermal scopes and seeing a figure standing in the trees. A glowing heat signature, but when they pull their eyes away from the scope and look at the same spot with their naked eyes, there is nothing. The figure is gone, or it was never there to begin with. This is a recurring report. The Button Man is known to hunt the hunters by following them for miles through the dense scrub. He moves with a silence that is not natural for a man of his age or size. He is a shadow among shadows. I am stating the facts when I say the police have questioned him and found no direct evidence of a crime. He is described as intelligent and helpful in his own strange way. But his presence remains an omen. This brings us to the most controversial part of my research and the theory I want you to consider. Why can this man exist for decades in the bush without ever being caught? How does he stay so hidden? We need to discuss the possibility of invisible entities or beings that exist on a different frequency. These are entities that can bend light around their bodies like a biological camouflage. They are masters of deception. In the missing 411 files, we have reports of what witnesses call the glitter man. It looks like a distortion in the air, similar to the heat haze on a highway. It moves between the trees with intent. If the Button Man is not entirely human, or if he has learned to mimic these entities, it would explain everything. It would explain why he can stand right behind a person and remain unseen. It is a predator's trick. This would also explain the failure of the K9 units in the Becker and Hill cases. If the kidnapper is not touching the ground in a physical way, there is no scent to follow. There are no skin cells to track. Indigenous cultures in Australia have spoken about the trickster spirits of the mountains for thousands of years. They tell stories of beings that lure you away from the path using voices of loved ones. They are ancient. These are not just myths to entertain children. They are warnings about a reality we have forgotten. We think we are at the top of the food chain because we have GPS and drones. We are very wrong. The case of Russell Hill and Carol Clay ended with a conviction, but so many questions remain unanswered. Why was the tent burnt in such a specific way? Why was the drone left behind like a discarded toy? And what about the others, like Niels Becker and Conrad Whitlock, who are still out there somewhere? Their families are left with a hole in their lives that can never be filled. The mountains keep their secrets. When you go into the high country, you are entering a world that operates by different rules. You are entering a place where the Button Man watches from the darkness. You are never truly alone in the bush. My advice to you is to never hike alone and always keep your companions within your line of sight. Trust that feeling in the back of your neck when it tells you to run. Do not wait for a reason. We will continue to document these vanishings, and we will continue to look for the truth behind the silence. This is the mystery of the missing 411. Stay safe, stay aware, and keep your eyes on the tree line. I am David Paulides, and I want to thank you for joining me on this investigation tonight. There is much more to uncover in the months to come. I will see you in the next report. Good night.